A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Films I'm Willing to Talk About Again. And now, here comes some more films that I'm wanting to talk about yet again for this series. This is in fact a trio of films that have amazingly well spent points for so much to offer. And I'm specifically talking about the Night at the Museum trilogy. Today is where I'm going to focus on all three of them at the same time, to the best of my effort, and pretty much as quickly as possible. We're going to start off with Night at the Museum from 2006. The first time I saw this, I remember going to an IMAX Dome Theater in Milwaukee in summer 2006, when this first came out. At the same time that I watched this film, though, because this was the first time I ever saw a film in an IMAX Dome Theater, this was also the first time that I ever got to know about Snow Caps and Hershey's Kissables, which were at the time brand new candies. And considering how Kissables were unfortunately discontinued after a while, Snow Caps are still around, and still does bring back a lot of good memories here and there. But to be real, Night at the Museum is an amazing film, all things considered. It's essentially the film about Ben Stiller's new job as a night guard at the museum. He's got old employees that used to be night guards, but will in fact be retiring. And so, it's up to Larry to be the new guy over there at that museum in New York City. And upon doing so, the first few nights pretty much turn out to be none like anything else that Stiller himself had never seen in his whole life. In this film alone, we do get to see that just as the title itself puts together, along with the slogan, everything comes to life. Night at the Museum essentially gives us the impressive, unique capturing of a possibility of what could happen after dark in an entire museum or other such place with all kinds of exhibits to look forward to seeing during the daytime. Because what happens is that, at first, Ben Stiller encounters a large Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. It apparently comes to life, and is in fact there for all sorts of reasons. Eventually, others start to come to life as well, including an actual wax model of Theodore Roosevelt, whom in this film is played by Robin Williams. R.I.P. And then of course you have the likes of other well-known actors here and there. Dwayne Johnson, Owen Wilson, as well as a bunch of others. So this film really does give us a nice insight on some casting for the most part. Lots of well-known actors are put in this whole trio of films whatsoever. Eventually, after some time though, a plot comes by where a large tablet is in fact used to control how life at the museum is operated. And because the original owners / employees of the museum, which were meant to be the night guards to begin with, were meant to take that to try and alter how life works in there, they must be stopped. And so it's up to Ben Stiller and the rest of the entire set of models out there in that museum to put an end to Dick Van Dyke's actions. And as such, well, there you pretty much have it. The ending to a really good film in general. But then of course comes the sequels. Yeah, they made sequels to this one because why not? Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. It came out a few years later and was able to give us a bit of a different insight. In this film, we do have the same old cast and characters established, but we do have a bit of a different story. These characters are in fact en route to the Smithsonian, which is in fact a historical venue for all sorts of things considered historically valuable by today's standards. And a lot of things get shipped over to that place. But in this exact case, a model based off of an ancient Egyptian warrior is in fact entitled to try and bind the real world with another dimension, thanks to a portal, but is eventually found and put a stop to. Over time, I felt like that this one actually has caught on to me just as good as the first one did, but it didn't necessarily give me a whole lot of insight and a bit more regard for what the original had done. However, though, this didn't necessarily stop them from creating a third film, Secret of the Tomb from 2014. This was the latest film in the series, and this was actually the last. There never would be a Night at the Museum Part 4, which of course I will get to the reason for that in just a moment. But in any case though, the gang is all now up there in England to spend time over with another museum full of figures and models and the like that all come to life. But in this exact case, a large curse comes down onto them. And if it isn't stopped in time, then all of the models and everything else that had come to life in that museum or elsewhere in the world will all be completely silent and static until the end of time. They will never be able to come back to life during the nightfall or otherwise. After some time has passed though, with all the characters in action and all the unique things put together that we do get to see here, considering how this is the last ever entry for the series, the curse has stopped and everybody is back to normal. And now, let's get into the reasoning behind all of this. Night at the Museum itself has had some pretty impressive directing work and creative value. And the sequels themselves were pretty much just a bit of a carryover from these unique traits that we never quite got to see very often. In most franchises, we don't really get to have a whole lot of reason for having sequels other than the fact that they just simply exist. When you really think about it though, there's only so much that you can get out of sequels these days. As I've discussed before with the Ice Age franchise, they do not learn from their mistakes. And although, of course, the gang involved in there, including Manny, Ellie, Crash, Eddie, Diego, Sid, Peaches, Buck, and all that, they all come together pretty much. But by the most recent release that we got this past January with The Adventures of Buck Wild, it really makes you wonder, are we actually going to expect new things to come around with the series? Or is this basically just going to be the last straw that we'll ever have towards them? In any case though, I'm not really wanting to find out what I could possibly expect to see from them. In addition though, the sequels that we're seeing here in the Night at the Museum trilogy, they don't really measure up quite as much as what the first one had given us. And the first one was already a really good movie in general. The fact that I saw it in an IMAX dome theater along with some, well, other things pretty much considered, is one thing, but when considering the fact that I've seen the whole series itself, I've had them on DVD and all that, and the fact that Secret of the Tomb was the latest installment that I watched, not even 8 years ago. Like, it's pretty impressive when you really think about it. But in all seriousness, the most obvious thing about why there never was a Night at the Museum Part 4 is because of the death of Robin Williams, which happened in the same year in 2014. This was pretty much the last ever hurrah that he ever had in his film career before committing suicide at age 63. As tragic as that sounds, there was a lot of things out there that probably could have been expected. If Williams were still alive today, he probably would have had more influence on the series than ever. And I'm more than sure he probably would have had a good thing about a possible Part 4 or Part 5 in the series if such sequels like those were to exist. But nevertheless, the trilogy itself, it's a really good series of films. The first one was amazingly well put together, had a great cast, had some nice writing and directing jobs, had plenty of comedy in it. At the same time, there was also plenty of action and some suspenseful parts, and a lot of other things to look forward to. And the second one is a bit more than just a continuation of the story and the lore that had been previously established. So, in any case, I don't really want to disregard the films for what they are. The third film, however, tends to take things a little too far by simply introducing almost all of the characters to death row. So, by simply putting it out there that an ancient curse is going to stop these models from moving ever again and possibly coming to life ever again, that's a bit grim if you ask me. But I do feel like that they did have to come up with something just so they can continue onwards with whatever other projects that they had to work with. So in all seriousness, I quite love this series. It's just a bit of a shame that we'll never get to see films like this again. We'll never get to see Night at the Museum Part 4, 5, or 6 even. And maybe it's all for the best. And so, if you want to see more, go down to my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.